Hello. We are back with my vintage lady from 1975.
I know, I am vintage.
Anyway, we
I am
are.
worth a lot of money, though.
Yeah, you are, especially with all them replacement
With all those
parts.
spare parts.
The dental work alone.
Hey.
Anyway, Dale.
Yeah.
And we had
Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio. And we had a wonderful PK day last Friday night and Saturday. And it was a really great time up here for us, but also for those that came. I think there were like 72 PKs there, something like that.
It was epic.
And just a real great. I really appreciate Kazad Baptist Temple, Pastor Burke, for putting that on and inviting us to come and be a part of it. And we were so blessed by that. And, when you think about a PK, there's a lot of variant opinions, I guess, or thoughts concerning PKs. A lot of people, there's dangers, there's errors and dangers on either edge you can go to, right? It's certainly true that there are people that can take advantage of being a PK and have an attitude that they are superior to others and treat people in the church badly because, well, I'm the PK and, all that type of stuff. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I will say I don't believe that's the majority. I think that's rare, rare in my experience and with the people I know. You may have had a different experience, and in your experience, you're like, oh, PKs are that way. They aren't, and yet they do get a bad rap from a few. I know this from pastoring, though. You could have 200 awesome people, and one bad person can make it feel like the whole church is unbearable. Yeah. And so one bad PK, if we might say it that way, can put all of them under suspicion. But most PKs struggle because of the weight and pressure of people's expectations that they try and put on them, and the criticism, and more than just on them, more than just about them. That when people in the church complain about the pastor, they're not complaining about the pastor to a PK. They're complaining about their dad, and they're criticizing their dad. They're criticizing their mom. They're criticizing their family. And it's a heavy, heavy weight. And we were able to minister, I believe, and help a lot this past weekend. And we're so thankful for that. And if you would like to see the messages that were preached, encourage you to go to the Facebook page for Kazad. No, YouTube for Kazad Baptist Temple. So YouTube has the messages that were preached, and Pastor Burke brought a fantastic message on Thursday night. I was blessed to preach 5 messages on Saturday, and then Brother Burke, I think, had 2, and then Brother AJ Sturm had 4. Yeah. And I think all of those are recorded and up there. Yeah. And so maybe a good opportunity.
It was very, very good.
Yeah.
Even if you're not a PK, it would be good to watch them just to help you understand your pastor and his family more.
Yeah, and his children particularly, and maybe how to pray for them and how to help them. Yeah,
it was good.
And if you're a pastor and you weren't a PK yourself, might be helpful for you. Yes. To understand maybe some things about your kids and how to minister to and help them. So, yes. Those are some good things. So I just thought I'd put that out there. It was a real blessing. This isn't going to be airing until September, so it would be all the way back in August on their YouTube channel. But if you're able to go, and maybe in the future we'll talk more about PKs and those type of things.
But that's
not our topic today. No. Hold the phone. Today we are talking about parenting adult children and being a grandparent.
Which is my favorite thing in the world, being a grandparent.
Used to be being married to me, but now it's being a grandparent, evidently.
Well, sorry.
I come in second to the grandkids, but at least...
But you're not third.
That's what I say. At least I'm not where the kids are now.
Yeah.
We have 4 adult children.
Yeah. Married.
Praise God. The hardest thing we experienced in that process of them transitioning into marriage and adulthood was, for Angela, was the boys getting married. Yeah. But for me, it was the girls. It was the opposite. Yeah. For me. And it was a weird transition going from the kids at home to gone. But we raised our kids to leave, and
we weren't sad about it. It was just different.
We determined early on, and I do believe this is important for parents to really get an idea that I'm not raising them to stay.
No.
And I do hear that from parents. Oh, I'm
Oh,
dreading leaving
ah.
them leaving. It's like, I'm raising them to go
Yep.
and to do what God wants them to do and to serve the Lord and so forth. So that's how we looked at it for the whole time they were growing up.
Yep.
And we purposely encouraged them that we were looking forward to them being gone. And I don't mean that in a cruel way,
No.
but we wanted them to know that we were good,
Yeah.
we were solid, and that when they were gone, it wasn't going to take away what we have,
No.
that they didn't have to worry about that. And I think some kids worry about that
I think
because
they do. We joked obviously a little bit with them about it, but we always did try to encourage them like, hey, as you're growing up, the purpose you're growing and the purpose, for life is to find God's purpose that he has for you and to do it. God's purpose is not for you to remain in our house your whole entire life.
amen.
He has a purpose for you.
Yeah.
Go find it.
Please leave.
So,
Leave. Why don't you leave already? No, I'm just joking. But we did encourage them that way. We wanted them to go forward and move forward in life and have a blessed life. And we know what a blessing it was for us to have a family, and we wanted them to experience that. I would never want my kids to not experience the both the good and the bad that we experienced.
Yeah.
I don't want them to experience all the bad, but I think
but
the
sometimes
bad,
that's how you learn.
the bad helps to appreciate the good. You can't really appreciate the good if you've never experienced bad. And so it is part of it, and it should be embraced in that fashion, I believe. And that's like suffering in the Christian life. Everyone's against, I don't want to suffer. I don't want to suffer. But suffering is how you grow to appreciate the peace that God gives and
Right.
experience the peace in the middle of hardship and trials.
Yeah.
So when our kids started getting married, though, that's when the relationship started getting more complicated. Now, we had this policy from the time our kids were young, and I told them early on when they were young that until they were 18, I was going to let them start making decisions when they were teenagers. But if I didn't believe the decision was a good decision, I had the right to veto it. And so I wanted them to learn how to make decisions. I let them make some decisions that I knew weren't going to work out well, but I knew the consequence would not be life altering, and that way they learned consequence for decisions. They need to be able to make decisions that fail. Brother Hayes used to say it in a weird way, which he said a lot of things that way, but he said it, I think, to get people's attention so much, that he would say, you need to give your kids permission to sin. And he didn't mean that to tell them it was okay to go sin. What he meant was that it was okay to make decisions you wouldn't, to do things that you wouldn't, so that they can experience the consequence of making bad decisions. That's really what he meant, but he worded it differently. And some
Right.
people took it differently, took it wrong because of
Right.
that. But he kind of liked to shock people a little bit, and then he would explain it, But, they do need to make decisions. I disagree with the idea that, your control, the uber control of a child does not help them mature and grow in their understanding, their thinking, their discernment. And so they need to be able to make decisions and experience consequences and all of that. But if it was a decision that I knew was going to create actual harm to them or spiritual harm, I would not allow it. I didn't allow them to make those kind of decisions. Well, or I would correct them and tell them, we're not going to do that, and here's why,
Right.
But at 18, I stopped telling them no. At 18, they had to be responsible to make the decision. I let them make their decisions, but I told them at 18, I'm still going to tell you what I think, but you get the final say on the decision. I'm going to give you counsel. When I think you need counsel, I'm going to give you counsel, whether you like it or not, and then you have to make the right decision. And then at 20, we stopped giving them counsel that's unsolicited. And we said, you are 20, you're morally accountable to God. I believe that's the age of moral accountability, according to Kadesh Barnea and other places in the Bible, that 20 and up was morally accountable and responsible. And so I stopped giving unsolicited advice. I stopped. Angela,
it was harder for the mom,
struggled. And I had to keep going, okay, you're not allowed. You can't tell him that. She'd be like, I'm going to tell him that. I'm like, no, you can't. And she only slipped up a couple times. But was necessary for them to learn that. And our kids call us for counsel.
Yes, they do.
But they call us because they know they can, and they know that we're not going to interject. If they don't ask us,
we're just going to listen.
We're going to listen, and we're not going to impose. And I'm going to put this, so this is the first real thing I wanted to get to, was the fact is that, in my opinion, that statement or that principle is the key to being a good parent of adults.
Yes.
And a lot of parents
try to still control them.
They try and control even when they're, 20 plus or have kids, they're married and they have kids and so forth like that. And that is where you start driving them away.
Right.
It's not hard to be a good parent to your adult kids. You just have to be available to them and not impose on them and try and still correct them and tell them and all of that. I mean,
we always say, show up to big things and just listen.
Yeah.
Don't try to control.
Right. Yeah. That's in my opinion, our opinion, that's the key. We have an incredible relationship with all of our kids.
Yeah.
There have been moments when they were frustrated with us. There's been moments when we were frustrated with them. And you know what we did? We prayed.
And we talked it out.
And we talked to them. And when they were ready to talk, wanted to talk, we talked. And we haven't had many of those moments. But I mean, there have been things where, maybe they were frustrated about something or we were frustrated. We never went to them and said, you better deal with this or something like that. We said, let's pray that God will open up that opportunity.
Right.
And God
always does.
Always does. And so having that ability to trust God with them, because you have to. They're their own family. The Bible says when a person gets married, they leave father and mother and they cleave to each other. And they are now one flesh. They're accountable to God. They're responsible to God. And we ought to encourage them in that, not discourage them.
Right.
And not interfere. It's hard enough to make a marriage work without parents interfering in the process. So, just encouraging that way. What do you think has been the or illustration or something of a time when that was a hard part or for us or a blessing? Is there anything that comes to your mind like that you say, this is where I'm glad we did it that way in this circumstance, or that, it was hard to do it in these other circumstances?
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head other than I know for me, it's hard not to kick in that mom mode. And I do always have to tell myself, they're their own family. They're their own adult. They are going to do things different. They don't have to do it like I did. They don't have to think like I did. And just reminding myself of that and just listening to them and trying to be an edifier and not a controller.
When she says these things to herself, it's usually out loud and I'm in the room.
Yes. To myself. We are one. So
absolutely.
But it is like in the moment, when you're talking to your kids on the phone and, like everybody, they've all gone through different battles and struggles, being newlyweds, be it with extended family or finances or whatever, they all go through it. And then, so, they call and they're talking to you about it. And the hardest thing is not giving them that counsel
unless they ask.
But most of the time, I mean, there's been occasions where they have asked for counsel, but most of the time they just want to call and vent.
Yeah.
And I know that because I do the same thing, but just to myself.
Yeah.
But just remembering that, in the moment and not overstepping and giving that unsolicited counsel, and I don't remember the circumstance, but I remember a couple of times that happened and I started to give counsel and they just shut down. I'm like, man, why did I do that? I didn't mean to do that, So just remembering that because I want to keep the communication open between us. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a key, I think, thing, There've been a few times that they've been talking to me about a problem, an issue, and I've said to them, are you asking for counsel or are you just wanting to vent? Because I mean, I can let you do either one. I can just listen to you or I can share some thoughts with you and I'm okay either way,
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to ask that question.
Yeah. I think clarifying because, if you don't, then you give unsolicited counsel when it's not wanted, then it does cause them to shut down. But if you clarify up front, then you know how to respond. you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
and then you can keep that line of communication open.
Yeah. We have enjoyed when our kids were little, we did what we called family conference table. We learned that from Brother Hayes.
Mhm.
And family conference table was where everyone was able to tell what they were struggling with. And if there was something that had happened or that they had done that they know they shouldn't have, they could confess it at family conference table without reprisal. But if they did something that got caught and that hadn't been confessed, then,
They'd be in trouble.
now without reprisal doesn't mean they weren't verbally corrected. Okay, that was wrong. You shouldn't have done that and so forth. But at the same time, there was no like beyond that punishment
Mm.
if they confessed something there. But if, so as they were young, they learned how to communicate problems. And one of the big things at family conference table was you're not allowed to talk about other people. You can only talk about yourself. You can only talk about what you're dealing with, what you're struggling with, and you can't blame or attack other people. And you can explain why you're having a problem with something. You can say, I'm having a problem with X, Y, or Z, and I've tried this and I've tried this, but it hasn't worked and I don't know what to do. Can you help me? And other people then chime in on how to help. And often it's like, well, I'm responsible for that, or
Mm.
I'm sorry that I did that. And, it takes a bit to really get that practice
It
down.
does.
But we did have like a talk stick, you kind of know if you don't have the talk stick, you're not supposed to talk. And once, since our kids have been adults, we've had all of them together. There was a little issue between some.
Well, we've actually done it twice, but only two were married at the time.
Okay, that was a long time back,
Yeah.
yeah. And then so twice, and sometimes it's like because of the way people are all going different directions, there gets to be miscommunication here and there.
Mhm.
And so, even as adults, but it's a voluntary thing. No one's mandated to come.
Right.
It's a voluntary discussion, and it's been blessed, and God
Mhm.
worked that way.
Yeah.
But that has been it's a challenge for most people dealing with adult children because there's a lot of young people in our culture, I think, that really develop a victim mentality, and they blame their parents for everything that they see that was wrong in their life and all of their problems and any, thing they like, I was traumatized or something. And I do think a lot of victimhood thinking reimagines and reinterprets events that make those things into traumas
Right.
as an excuse for the way I think
Mm.
that are not real.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that we really haven't had to deal with that at all
No.
with our kids, thankfully. But I do talk to a lot of people that struggle that goes on, and where the kids blame the parents for things that didn't actually occur, or they interpret wrong. They interpret it as a trauma. And so that's a complicated issue for people. And then the other side of that then is, and this is a popular term nowadays, is gaslighting. Putting something out there that will instigate a
Will
reaction and
flare somebody.
or yeah, to try and, what kind of response are they going to give? Like the natural reaction would be to give a negative response, and they do something specifically, or they put things out there like, if you don't do what I want, then you're not going to be able to see the grandkids. And so it's like they gaslight that way, like, you either do what I want or else, I hold all the power and you can't see the grandkids if you don't do what I want. And that's
It's
wicked.
wicked. It's very wicked.
But it happens, unfortunately, in the culture. I hear about it a fair amount and it's not just with grandkids, but generally speaking, it's happening. It seems like more and more.
I think so.
And it's almost like the person feels like they're a hostage in that scenario.
Yeah.
And so how do you deal with that, though? My opinion on it, and here's what I say, this is an opinion on it. I can't give you chapter and verse on this. This is what I think. You have to decide what's the most important thing in the scenario and what you can live with.
Yeah.
Because, it's possible that you call their bluff and it was a bluff. It's also possible it's not a bluff.
Right.
And maybe it affects for a while. I know me, if I knew I was being manipulated like that, I couldn't handle that, and I would have to call the bluff. But not everybody's like me. But you have to be willing to accept the consequence if you're not. And that's the problem. People want to know, how do I get rid of the consequence if I don't call the bluff? And there's really no way to do that. I don't have an answer for that. It's call the bluff or live with the consequence, and that's basically all I can see at this point as an answer for that issue. But it
And
is,
we've seen it go both ways, so
unfortunately,
unfortunately.
we've seen it go both ways. That's right. And you've got to be, you're going to live with the consequences one way or another. The problem is when people are living with the consequence and not calling the bluff, so to speak, and it's destroying them mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Right.
It's like
Eating them up.
it's eating them up, and they think that the consequence is worse than calling that if they don't call the bluff, they think that what they're experiencing may be not as bad as the other,
Right.
but the truth is you can see the destructive nature of it on this side of it too, right? So I
Right.
mean, they're really just being eaten up in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just sad. I can't even imagine. I don't even want to imagine.
No,
We've counseled so many people that go through that. It's just awful.
it is, but through is pretty much the only way that you can get through it. I mean,
Yep.
right? You just got to go forward. So those are things that are, I mean, areas I know a lot of people with adult kids deal with, different things like that.
And I know we've counseled people, that maybe didn't have a relationship with their adult kids and they didn't get to see their grandkids, and we've counseled them, write your grandkids letters. Eventually, they're going to grow up. They're going to be out on their own.
Yeah,
And if you write them letters and then, save them till they are on their own and then mail them to the ones that are out of the house or whatever,
right,
so that they know that you didn't abandon them. It wasn't your plan, and that you
right.
do love them. We've counseled them to do things like that,
Yeah, yeah,
to go
absolutely.
ahead and send them a birthday card or whatever, all of that kind of stuff.
Right. And there's nothing you can do if
And what the parent does with it is on the parent, but you as a grandparent,
you did what you
you
could.
did what you could.
The other hard thing is when a kid goes off into worldliness and sinfulness, and how do you respond to that? Well, the reality is that you should still love your kid. I do disagree. There used to be a mentality that when a kid went off in sin, that you blackballed them and basically they were dead to you, and you never acknowledged them again. I disagree with that vehemently. I
Mm-hmm.
do not believe that that's biblical, and the texts that people use for that in First Corinthians have nothing to do with your children specific. I mean, it's talking about church discipline. And in First Corinthians chapter 5, it says, with such a one know not to eat. It's talking about someone that's under church discipline, and the know not to eat there is in reference to keeping the feast, which is a reference to the Lord's table for the New Testament church. So it's talking about not letting, they shouldn't be part of taking the Lord's table. It's not talking about a parent not going to McDonald's with a kid or meeting them and having a meal. And so it's misused, it's misapplied. It's not how the scriptures, it doesn't relate to how to treat your children if they get into sin. The other side of that, though, is you can't allow the sin to be normalized in the sense of like, hey, you can come do this at my house. Right. So there has to be a boundary of, I love you. I'm going to come meet you. I want you to know I love you. But in my home, the rules never changed. And if you come in my home, respect my rules. If we're at your home, that's different. And it
It's
might be
true.
that what you're involved in your home, I can't be a part of. That's okay. I still love you. I'm still willing to meet with you. I'm still meet on neutral ground, or something like that, so that we can have a relationship. And that, I think, is an important thing, because God never writes us off. God is willing to receive the prodigal back. Right. But one of the things that the danger is that you write them off completely and they don't believe they can come back. And the other danger there is that you go off into sin because they went off into sin.
We've seen that
And
more and more lately.
more and more have seen that where
I don't get that.
when the prodigal came to himself, he knew he could go back where he had left. And that means that the parent has to be there when they come to themselves. That means the parent has to be where they haven't moved, right? Spiritually speaking, church-wise, all of those type of things. They haven't moved. They're still there for them. There's a there to come back to.
Yeah.
And it's not been moved. The parent throwing it all away because their kids went off into sin.
There has to be a contrast. There has to be, if they're off in the world, they have to see the contrast of what they left. And that what the prodigal did, he remembered how good it was as dad's house. If you go off into the world with them, what is there to remember?
Exactly. And a lot of times it's because the parent's heartbroken. They begin to think, well, my rules were too strict and that's why, and so I'm getting rid of all these rules.
Which are all lies.
That's all a lie. You know,
Yeah.
the reality is that maybe sometimes rules are too strict. It's consistency and kindness that make the difference in rules.
Right.
It's consistency and kindness. Even strong rules with kindness, you know, they're fine. Consistency, weak rules with consistency, you're still going to have a decent outcome. You know, I'm just saying it's the consistency and the kindness in the process and the motivation there that they see, the love that they see, and not having a hypocrisy of I'm hard on you and justify myself, right? I
Right.
mean, all of those type of things. So you know, it's important to have that balance. I do believe, or that I say balance, but have those two elements
Mhm.
involved in the process.
And I think that's all part of being I think that's all part of having adult children is letting them like we started, letting them make their decisions, but
Right.
still being consistent where you're at.
They're not going to do the same with their kids
Yeah.
necessarily of how you did with
Yeah.
them. And the tendency is to be hypercritical of them or to, you know, or to try and tell them, you know, how wrong they are, things like that.
Right.
Um,
I'll just give an example. It's a silly little example, but it's a little example of that. I was always very protective of the kids growing up. Like I wouldn't let them go to the bathroom by themselves, until they were older, 12, 13 years old, they could go by themselves. But younger than that, always like send a sibling with them, or I would go and stand by the door or whatever. But like eternity, here they are traveling and she lets the kids go to the bathroom, by themselves or whatever. And so it's kind of funny because on the inside, I'm like screaming, no, but they're her kids. I gotta let her parent the way she wants to parent. But when they're with me, when I'm in charge of them, I do it my way. Eternity knows
you
that.
never break their rules.
No, I always keep their rules, but I just think it's a silly little illustration, but it's that way. I know Eternity, she's okay with that. That's the level.
And she's a good mom.
Yeah,
It's
she
not like
is.
neglect or something.
No. That's why I'm saying it's a silly illustration because it's just going to the bathroom,
Right.
But yeah, just myself, I just can't do that yet. Even though like she's fixing to be 10, but I'm still, and she looks like she's 11 or 12, but I'm just like, these are my babies. So it's just a silly illustration.
Yes, it is.
I know.
So I mean, those are all things like you just have to be able to allow them to
Be
be
different.
different, and they are different. All three of our kids that have kids are very different.
Oh yeah.
And our youngest, he and Jasmine, they'll be different. They're not the same as each other even.
No.
I will say this though, I don't know that there's a huge deviation from what they grew up with. And
No.
just, I mean, minor things, I would
Very
say.
very minor.
But
Yeah.
sometimes people do go to huge deviations. And so we knew that was always going to be a possibility. They might deviate a lot, Well, what do we do in that circumstance? Well, we had already made up our mind. This is, we're not going to tell them how they have to do it. We're going to
Mhm.
let them make that decision. We're going to let them be the parent and, we're not going to interfere. And so I think sometimes parents who push their kids to do what they think they ought to do end up reaping more of a reaction against what they're doing than there otherwise would have been.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah. And you even said that a while ago. Eternity was very sick when she was pregnant with her babies. And so, when the first two were born and she got pregnant with Lily, I watched the other two a lot. But I always asked her, hey, what's your routine? What's the routine you want for them? How do you want this done? Because I know how I functioned. I know how I would have done things, but like you said, I wanted to do, the way she did. So I would ask her, and a lot of times it was the same as what I did, but there were a few things that were different, which is fine. But I tried to do the way she wanted because they're her kids.
So when the kids are with us, we are very cautious to know that, if there is something different like that though, we're mindful of that and we don't, we
Yeah.
try not to deviate significantly if there's something,
Hmm.
going to the bathroom with the sibling,
Yeah.
that's not
That's not that
that
big
big
a
of a
deal.
deal. But
Yeah.
We don't I'm trying I don't even think of anything specific,
No,
but
I just trying to remember, like, back when they were younger, like, they didn't want them to eat much sugar and things like that, which I totally get because 'cause they're hyper,
yeah,
so
that's true for all of
I
them that
wouldn't
way.
give them, a lot of sweets or anything like that, nap time, they want them to take a nap, so I would make them take a
Yeah.
nap and, just things like that, little things like that, but
There's one area that Angela ruined for their mom, and it's still a problem, actually, and that is Angela made oatmeal with milk, and
yeah,
it was one of the funniest things because the kids, our oldest 3 grandkids, they eat oatmeal, they like oatmeal, but then when we had them last
December.
December for a few days and we made oatmeal, and I told Angela one morning, I said, "Hey, use the oat milk to make the oatmeal." And she's like, "Okay."
Okay.
So she made it with oat milk, and I want to tell you a secret here. Talk about change oatmeal.
Yeah.
It is so much better
Yeah,
made with
we
oat
can't
milk.
even eat it
I can't
the
eat it with
other
water.
way.
Can't eat it made with water. Oat milk,
And
oatmeal.
I have made it with a different kind of oat milk than what we had before, and it still wasn't as good. It
Yeah.
has to be that kind of oat milk.
Well, it's the creamy oat milk
Yes.
basically is what it is,
It's,
but, um, it
superb.
it's fantastic, and we put a little brown sugar and, blueberries.
Yeah.
And now the kids don't care for the blueberries,
So I would
but
pull out Declan and Lily's oat milk because they didn't like the blueberries, and then I'd put blueberries in it for the rest of us.
anyway, the funny thing was is that
Mm.
Lily, or the youngest of those 3, it just went nuts over this oatmeal, and she's like, "You have to teach me how to make this."
Mhm.
And so
Okay.
Angela taught her how to make she's like 6, you know?
Yeah.
Angela's teaching her how to make she goes, "We have to call mom." And so she calls her mom. She's like, "Mom, Oma's oatmeal is way better than yours. It's so much better than yours. It's not even close, Mom. You have to make it this way." And
And
she's
she
telling her
told her the
do
recipe.
it. It was so funny.
She
But
can still tell you today what the
oh
recipe
yeah,
is.
it's still an issue in the home. As a matter of fact, she still tells her mom, "This is the only way to make oatmeal
Yeah.
is the right way." You know,
Yeah.
so Oma ruined that situation.
It was Opa's fault 'cause he told me to use the oat milk.
It worked. It worked. Anyway, but we're not going to have time to talk much here about grandkids, so we'll do grandparenting another time.
Yeah.
You know, I think just to summarize here on the adult children side of this, okay, it is awesome to have a great relationship with your adult kids and with their spouses. And it's possible. I think more than anything, the reason adult child relationships break down is because parents they won't quit trying to be the controlling parent. They won't let their kids be adults, and they keep trying to meddle and control and manipulate,
Yeah.
and manipulation is a horrible destructive thing in relationships,
Yeah.
trying to control and twist things. And they're not dumb, they're adults. They deal with people like that, and they hate that. Everyone hates that. And if you're trying to control or manipulate your children and you wonder why they're pulling away, that's why.
We always determined that we wanted to be an influence in our kids' lives, not just control them. And so even as adults, we wanted to continue to be an influence in their life. And the only way to do that is to let them be who they are
Yeah.
so that they want you to be an influence in their life.
Absolutely. And that's a wonderful thing that your kids would want you to be in their life. But at the same time, you set the tone most of the time. Not always. I know that there are times where kids go off into sin. It's their own choices. Not all of that falls on the parent. I know that. I believe that. I do believe that to train up a child in the way he should go when he's old and not depart from it. It's not a promise, it's a proverb. If you train your children biblically and right, they're more likely to continue to do right.
Mhm.
And if they, but that doesn't negate their free will either. And if everyone continued exactly like they were raised, then lost people would never get saved. And we don't believe that. We don't believe a person who grew up in a horrible home can't become a good Christian. And if it goes one way, it must be able to go the other way. And so, I thank God for biblical principles of how to raise children. But I also thank God that once they become adults, they're accountable to God now. They're not accountable to me.
Right.
And as long as they were at home, I was responsible for them. I'm not responsible for them any longer. They're now between them and God whether they do right and whether they continue doing right. And yes, it will hurt if they don't do right. I understand that. I mean, completely. But at the same time, it's their moral choice now. And that's how it ought to be. Brother Hayes used to say, there was only one perfect parent in the history of the world, and all his kids went bad. And he didn't do anything wrong. God didn't do anything wrong, and yet all men are sinners. And all men reject him and push against him. And, even we who are Christians struggle with obedience, and yet we somehow put this expectation that our kids are somehow never going to have any of that toward us when we have it toward our Heavenly Father.
Right.
And in our minds, we have been much better parents than we had, or something like that. Like, why would my parents not treat me? Don't they know how good I was to them? Well, they don't. They don't know because they don't have any other experience than the one they had with you. And it's okay that you understand that and that you give them the space to be themselves and give them the right to be their own person, and just be there to love them, encourage them, and help them. And if they're off in sin, yeah, you can't coddle their sin. You can't condone their sin. You have to stay right where you are and do what's right and continue to do what's right. And it's heartbreaking, but, praying for them, praying that God will get a hold of them, but leave the door open to them also, that they know that they can come home.
Yep. I agree.
That's a lot of yep.
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 There's nothing else to add.
Amen. Well, we're looking forward to a trip here pretty soon. We're going to be going overseas. I don't know if we'll be overseas when this airs or not. We may be over in Trinidad or Guyana when this episode airs, or we may just be leaving. But sometime in the near future,
we will be somewhere.
We'll be somewhere.
Sure.
But do pray for us as we go to the mission field. It's some open doors that God's given us to go do training, counseling training, and training with family issues and different things like that where we go, and we're looking forward to what God has in store for that, and thankful for the opportunity.
I agree.
It's your favorite word tonight? Yep.
Apparently.
Yep. We have a favorite little video.
Apparently.
No, not that one. Macy, when she was maybe 2. Was she 2? Not quite 2?
Maybe one of these episodes I'll find it and play
it. Is so stinking funny.
It is hilarious.
Because Angela's laugh is
very loud.
Yeah. And
I tried to not be, but it just is.
So Charity was filming Macy, her oldest, and she said, "Can you laugh like Oma?" And she went, ha 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 ha. Yep. Every time she says yep, I think of that.
That's funny.
So
I will have to find it one day and play it for you.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Because it is funny. I probably do have it in my videos, but
well, when we talk about grandkids,
we'll
have that video. All right.
I love it.
Y'all have a blessed day.